What's up, everybody? Mikey Dare Panzernator here with Dev Diary number 16 for Hearts of Iron 4 Man the Guns. And this is the overview of naval changes to Hoi 4 coming with the 1.6 Ironclad update and the Man the Guns expansion. Now, Podcat said that most of this will end up being its own Dev Diary in the weeks to come, which is exciting, but let's get to it. First up is task forces and missions. Instead of fleets like we have now, we will have fleets made up of task forces. So each fleet will be led by an admiral and assigned to one area of responsibility, and each task force within that fleet can have individual orders. A lot of these orders are designed to work with each other. So an example given was you can have your battleships and main battle fleet sitting in port waiting for lighter ships like destroyers patrolling around to find the enemy. This is going to be important because one of the things they're adding in Man the Guns is fuel, and you're not gonna have a doom stack of Yamatos or Bismarcks or anything. I know some other YouTubers who shall not be named made videos saying, hey, the best thing to do is just spam, have your 4 carriers to prevent overcrowding by having more, and then spam battleships. So those days are gone, and so you're not just having your doom stack of Yamatos or Bismarck guarding the English Channel or the home islands of Japan, because they'd guzzle down fuel like I guzzle down beer while watching a football game. Yes, so you're going to have more fuel efficient ships like destroyers or light cruisers or whatever, and like patrol fleets, and they'll be out in the ocean at all times or almost all times searching for the enemy, and then call in the big guns whenever the enemy is spotted. So in addition, you're also kind of going off of this for each task force. You'll be able to set, aggressiveness, repair priority, repair split off, and all that stuff now you have for your ships, like I think the fire at will button. Of course, none of this is exact. Of course, all these numbers and all this artwork is not final. This is all subject to change, but here it is, some of this is me speculating, some of this is in the Dev Diary. If you want to read the Dev Diary for yourself, that link is in the description. So yeah, each task force is going to have its own rules, basically kind of like for air wings or fleets currently. But going back to our example, you could have your scout task force wait for help, and then have your battleships go all Leroy Jenkins into the fight. So basically, if your patrol fleet's aggressiveness says hey, I need help taking out this task force we spotted, then they'll wait and call in backup, but if they can take it on their own, they'll go in. So basically, so kind of getting off track, but going back, they're gonna have, you can see in the screenshot, they're going to have task forces and fleets kind of organized like armies and army groups are organized, and at the bottom there's going to be a button for replacement ships or whatever. So basically you can tell your replacement ships where to go, which ships to go to which fleets, and reserve fleets or whatever. So that's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to them talking more about that, because one of the things I always thought of was having mothball fleets. So whenever you build new destroyers, you can leave all those World War I era destroyers in port in case you actually need them, or put them in a more mundane task like convoy escort or something, because you need your new cutting edge, state of the art. I was trying to combine cutting edge, state of the art. You want all your new fancy shiny toys in the battle, and your things that might not be as good in your task forces, because a small anti-submarine task force never engaged a main battle fleet. Cough cough, Taffy 3. That is sarcasm for those of you who are not historically acclimated. If you haven't heard of Taffy 3, look it up. It's a neat story in the Battle of Leyte Gulf. But so going back to the the scenario with the patrol fleet and the main fleet, so they've removed the mission search and destroy and replaced it with a new one called Strike Force, which kind of goes along with the example. So Search and Destroyer is also gone because they're changing the whole concept of fleet spreading. So your task force will occupy one, sea province. Sea zones are the big ones, and individual sea provinces or whatever. I don't know what they're called, but basically, so your task force will be in one location instead of somewhere in the English Channel or these 5 destroyers are magically spread out across the Gulf of Mexico, stuff like that. So, and this is one of the things they specifically said will be covered in depth in a future dev diary. So part of combat is spotting and engagement into combat. So currently, ship engagement is based on a dice roll, which means if there's like convoys passing through a season where ships are present, or if they're, if you have ships from combatants in the same sea zone, they'll end up in combat basically no matter what, no matter how hard your ships are to spot. So your submarines almost always end up getting shot at or stuff like that. And there's also the problem now that once combat begins, like all the ships in that area kind of just pile into some doomstack battle, which is highly unrealistic, because one of the things about Hoi 4 is in the current state of the game, battles take significantly longer than they did historically, but movement is realistic. So what this means is in the current state of the game, battles take forever and ever and ever, and then you can just pile in reinforcements one after another and just get all your nearby fleets to just have, one massive decisive battle. So you can't, and this makes pretty much reinforcing is too easy, like I was saying, and you can't really have hit and run engagements. You can't have your convoy raiding German ships like the Scharnhorst or what they wanted the Bismarck to do, but the Bismarck got Bismarck. And so to fix this, they are splitting combat into 2 parts. There's going to be a spotting and actual combat. So in order for combat to take place, you must fully spot the enemy. It's going to be like a percentage tick. So in the screenshot provided, you can see there's like a little progress bar next to the German fleet, and the tooltip says they are 79% spotted with 9% a day or whatever. Podcat said that this is because there's a ton of max radar, and this is like on the upper end. But basically, once this number gets to 100%, combat could start, and of course, all this depends on your task force settings. So if another task force in the fleet is set to strike force, then the spotting force task force will kind of just, your patrol fleet. I need to be careful with my language because fleets are big and task forces are small. So your spotting task force will wait for the reinforcements to come in before engaging the enemy. And also, conversely, here in this situation shown here, the Germans can engage the British ships that are spotting them if the Germans' aggressiveness is set high enough, and they could, wipe the British patrol force off the map very quickly. Now, instead of a couple cruisers or large ships like we see here, if the patrol spots a pushover, say like some convoys or a lone destroyer or whatever, then the patrol force will engage on its own depending on the relative strengths, because you don't want to call out your main battle fleet of battleships to just absolutely massacre one destroyer. I mean, I've been on the receiving end of that in several World of Warships games, and it's not fun. But in Hearts of Iron 4, it's got to be a waste of fuel, and you want to conserve fuel. If you don't need your battleships, you don't want to use your battleships. So there's that. And another way they're going to try and get rid of the Doomstack pile-in is if you're trying to join an existing combat, your ships will be slower, and this will be based on organization level and distance travel. Of course, Podcat said if you do this manually, it'll be less of a penalty, but there will be a penalty nonetheless. So long story short, battles should be shorter, and you could, wipe out the enemy task force you're engaged with and run away back to port, or just GTFO before their reinforcements arrive. So you got to be very strategic about when you engage and when you don't engage, and take advantage of opportunities when you can. So carrying on from this, they're going to, like I said, they're trying to make combat less about a few decisive battles, and they were going to show something, but the preview for that is currently a mess of pink encoder art, so no preview of that today, but that just means we have something else to look forward to in a dev diary. Up next is a brief recap of naval terrain. This is my second video on a dev diary, so if you look in the description for the playlist or go back, you can see the previous video I've done on naval terrain. And basically, what they reiterated for us here. I'm sorry, I'm playing with something. I just dropped part of my microphone stand or whatever. I have to have something in my hand. I have to fidget with something, but anyways, back on topic. You have different types of naval terrain, so you can cope that you can cooperate or mix a advantageous fleet design and carefully pick your admiral traits, and you can have a fleet with a home field advantage. So there's not one best fleet composition. Cough, cough, other YouTubers, and which it's not their fault. That is the current state of the game, but that's not a fun way to play. I like role playing by having different types of fleets, and apparently now this will also be the most viable way to do things. But yeah, there will not be one best fleet composition. Instead, you can have different fleets for different purposes, especially more so than the current state of the game. Next recap is the repair and production system. This was covered in a previous dev diary, but I haven't done a video on it, so we'll go into that now. You now need to assign dockyards to repair ships, so it costs more than just time. You can't just park your ships in a port and they'll magically get stuff back. And in addition to this, when you build bigger ships like battleships, you can only have a limited amount of dockyards assigned to them. So I think it's 5 for capital ships, but you can still produce ships in parallel. So, each individual battleship will take a long time, but if you had, in the current state of the game, if you have 15 dockyards assigned to produce 3 battleships, in the new system, if you have 3 battleships with their 5 dockyards max each, all 3 will finish, I think, at roughly at the same time, and it'll take just as long to produce those 3 as it will to produce the 3 in the current state of the game. Obviously, this is not exact because numbers are not exact and this, that, and the other, but, you get the general idea. You're going to, instead of building like what I do, just setting like, let's build 5 battleships, you're going to want to set them up in parallel instead of just clicking that number button exclusively. And finally, one things we haven't seen here, but I'm hoping we see in a future dev diary, there will be changes to ship design. Wait, we haven't seen anything yet. Let me just check my dev diary thing. It doesn't look like it. So basically this will be an upcoming dev diary, and one of the things I'm looking forward to the most. You'll be able to design ships and refit ships, which allow you to adapt to changing circumstances and use new technology. So, you think of like the American battleships that were damaged at Pearl Harbor. They all got refit with those nice dual-purpose 5s and radar and target acquisition systems and a whole bunch of new bells and whistles. So you'll be able to do that in game and fully take advantage of your technological advancements. And also this means that your ships will have more staying power. So if your ship only gets damaged, you can refit it and make it better, harder, faster, stronger, all of those things. And instead of just saying like, oh well, it's an old battleship and I have new ones, so I might as well just build a new one and let that one die. So that's it for this week that they've given us. But we now have an overview of what's changing in the naval game with Man the Guns and Ironclad update. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about all these features, like I said, especially about ship design and combat. This will, of course, be in the upcoming weeks. But for now, this is all we have. And, it's going to be interesting to see how, all these new things, task forces, the new combat system, ship refitting, and naval terrain. I think those 4 specifically will all work together to make the naval game a more involved aspect of Hearts of Iron 4. So if you're playing as someone like Australia, and if you're playing as Australia, I haven't played an Australia game, but you can't really, outproduce the Japanese in terms of a fleet. But in the new system coming up, I could see it where you could perhaps design a fleet. I think I don't remember off the top of my head the naval terrain around Australia, but you could build a fleet more suited to your home waters, and even though you'll have fewer ships than the Japanese, you'll be better suited to defend your home island of the land down under, and giving us our wonderful Outback steakhouses. In before someone says Outback's not really Australian, it's only a joke. But let's see what else. the same thing goes for Germany. So historically Germany couldn't build a navy to compete with the Royal Navy, and in game right now, if you want to, if you've taken over all the land stuff, even if you've taken over Russia, you're just kind of staring across the channel until your naval bombers destroy enough of the Royal Navy. So you either spam naval bombers, you just kind of wait for your navy to build up, and then you try and go to town and get those guys on the UK. And that's not even talking about trying to get across the Atlantic. I just finished game that you'll see on this channel. If you want to see that, of course, be sure to check out my channel of where we played Kaiserreich Germany, not the mod, like bring back Kaiser Wilhelm with the Waking the Tiger focus tree. But it's a pain to get across the Atlantic. So this will make things probably, I don't want to say easier, but you'll have more creative and important decisions on how to do that. I also think it's going to be interesting to see how repairs play out. I kind of touched over this again earlier, but you're going to want to avoid losses. I feel like it's going to be less about just pooping out a bunch of ships and more about retrofitting your ships, keeping them high on health, using what you've got instead of just kind of build and let sink type of deal. So hopefully, I mentioned the Pearl Harbor, the battleships that survive is the wrong word, but the battleships that were recoverable after Pearl Harbor. So, not the Arizona, but I think the West Virginia is one of them where, it was able to be refitted and used later in the war. So, this is more realistic and more important, not that realism matters in the video game, but I think this will lead to a more fun gameplay experience. But that is all for this week's Dev Diary. But of course, we are going to finish off by looking at the rejected titles. There's a link called Nice Boat that leads to a YouTube video of some boat in the lake or something. I don't know what it is. I don't get the reference or the joke or whatever. But there's a link in the description. Or if you're too lazy to go to the Dev Diary and click on it yourself, there's a link in the description if you want to see it. There's some Japanese stuff, so it might be anime. So who knows? I'm just out of the loop. Next we have ship spotting. Choose the wait, what the hell? I think I typoed this in my script. Just unbelievable. Where the hell? What does it say? You see on the screen. Ship spotting. Choose the Navy, choose the big ass ship, and choose a zone. All right. Then war game version of the DM going. Roll a perception check. So shout out to all my fellow D&D nerds watching this. Up next, these are actually the boats you're looking for. And if you can't see it, but I'm doing the Ben Kenobi hand wave at the stormtroopers and try to get a little bit of the Sir Alec Guinness accent in there. Then we have, remember men, the enemy battlefield is more afraid of you than you are of them. Kind of funny. And finally there's, I see you've spotted a ship. I'm a bit of a ship spotter myself. Mimi, these aren't the best rejected titles, I'm not going to lie. Probably one of the more interesting Dev Diaries, even though it is only just giving us a taste of what's to come. But rejected titles could have been a little bit better. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you thought of this overview. Of course, like I said, if you want to read the Dev Diary for yourself, which I encourage all of you to do, because I inadvertently missed something or focused on something that you would not focus on, that link is in the description. And if you enjoy this, I hope you will leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and check out my Patreon page. Thank you all so much for watching, and until the next one, this is Mikey Panzernator signing out. See you, nerds!